Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. In today's video, we've got part 1 of my Game Week 24 top transfer targets. The reason we've got 2 parts is because we've got such a long gap in between Game Week 23 and Game Week 24. Therefore, this week we're going to have my top transfer targets with respect to defenders. And then next week, we're going to have my top transfer targets with respect to midfielders and attackers. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So we're going to start with Andrew Robertson today. Now, I'm sure due to his 2 assists in Game Week 23, Robertson is now going to be in higher demand. But he has recently had his ownership increase slightly, and he has been ticking along quite well recently. Just the other week, he scored 12 points when Trent scored 10. So he has been outscoring Trent in a couple of the weeks, matching him in others. And of course, every time Liverpool get a clean sheet, Robertson will get the clean sheet as well. And with the added attacking output that we've seen from him recently, he could definitely be a fantastic option. Obviously, the major issue with Robertson is that you only have 3 Liverpool spots. And most people, and if you don't have this, you probably should, would have Trent, Salah, and then you've got that 3rd Liverpool spot free. Now, Jota at his price point offers such fantastic value. His underlying statistics are incredible. His non-penalty expected goal involvement's above 0.9, approaching 1 expected goal involvement per game, which is obviously excellent. And therefore, it's been pretty obvious, you would say, this season that 3rd Liverpool spot should really be on Jota. Even with the fact that he doesn't necessarily play 90 minutes every game, even if you take that into account, his underlying statistics are so good that he just offers such incredible value. But recently, Robertson has started to outscore him, and Robertson has started to provide value in and of himself. So I guess the question comes down to, where do you want to go with that 3rd Liverpool spot? Now, Liverpool's defence is highly impressive. Obviously, we know how good their attack is. It's the best attack in the league, and it has been for some time. That is largely down to Salah and Mane, but like I said, Jota's underlying stats are fantastic. But Liverpool's defence is fantastic as well. So we've got Liverpool's defensive data here. They are the joint second best defence in the league with 0.96 expected goals conceded per 90. They're joint with Chelsea. Obviously, City are incredible, as we'll discuss with some of the players later on. But outside of that, they're incredible defence. They're quite a bit clear of Brighton in 4th and then Spurs in 5th. So as well as them having a fantastic attack, they do have a fantastic defence. And you could definitely justify picking Robertson ahead of Jota. Of course, the issue with Liverpool is their fixtures are a bit of a mixed bag over the next sort of 6 or 7 games. So Leicester's not a difficult fixture by any means, but when you're looking from a defensive perspective, and that's what the colour ticker we have here is there from a defensive perspective, Leicester's not necessarily an easy game, and you would expect Leicester to get a couple of chances. They've been attacking fairly well recently, managed to score against Brighton in Game Week 23, which isn't an easy feat when Brighton are fairly good defensively as well. 25 and 26 are incredible, though. Burnley away and Norwich at home. They're good fixtures from an attacking or defensive perspective, but you would expect at least 1 clean sheet in those 2, potentially 2 clean sheets. Obviously, they blank in 27 and then West Ham and Brighton in 28 and 29. So what I would say is with any form of Liverpool treble up, whether it be Jota, Robertson, and Jota, Trent and Salah, or whether it be Trent, Robertson and Salah, you're going to need to think about how you're going to maneuver Game Week 27. So in Game Week 27, there are a few teams blanking. So what I would say is, if you're going to bring in Robertson alongside Trent, make sure you've got 3 other playing defenders, because you're going to need 3 defenders that week. Or you should make sure that you've got a free hit spare to play. So if you're not playing your free hit, you need to have 3 playing defenders outside of Trent and Robertson. So please bear that in mind, a little tip for you there. But the fixtures are generally okay. And the thing is, when you're bringing in a player with such great attacking threat and from a defence that are so fantastic in Liverpool, the 2nd best defence in the league, I'd say I'm fairly confident that it'll get clean sheets regardless of the fixtures. So there's something to bear in mind, but I wouldn't stress too much about the fixtures. With respect to the underlying statistics, 24.4 projected points over the next 6 game weeks, and that's excluding, obviously, or I should say, including the blank in 27. So that's really good output with respect to what the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm thinks he'll score over the next 6 game weeks. His expected FPL points per 90, highly impressive as well. 6.32 is really good. Obviously, a clean sheet and appearance points would be 6 points. So his expected FPL points over the first 23 game weeks is that of at least a clean sheet and appearance, which is obviously incredible. Definitely justifies the £7.1 million price tag. He's got a non-penalty expected goals and expected assist of 0.30. That is incredibly impressive. Obviously not quite that of Trent, which sits at around 0.4505. But still very good. And that does put him about 2nd or 3rd in the league for expected goal involvement for defenders. So again, he is justifying that price tag. Nowhere near as good as Trent, but obviously Trent's significantly more expensive. But you would definitely say that 7.1 million is probably a really good price for Robertson. Big chances per 90. Not very good at all. And that's because the majority of Robertson's underlying data comes from expected assist. So he's not going to get in the box a lot. He's not going to take many shots, but he is getting in the box in those sort of out wide positions. So you can see 4.2 touch in the box per 90 is actually very, very good. But it tends to be very, very wide from positions where he can get assists. That isn't a bad thing at all. But what I am saying, I guess, is that you shouldn't expect too many goals from Robertson across the season, but he will get a fair amount of assists, as we've seen in the past as well. And it's similar with Trent as well. The majority of Trent's underlying data is made up from expected assists as well. So I guess, does Robertson justify the £7.1 million price tag? I would say definitely he does, in my opinion. I guess it comes down to really, and it's probably beyond the scope of this video, comparing Robertson to Jota. For me, I personally think that Jota's underlying statistics, combined with the fact that he does play the majority of the minutes regardless of who's fit, I think that Jota probably provides the better value, considering you can get probably a £5 million defender, someone such as Digne, who can offer close to what Robertson can with respect to attacking output. And obviously, the clean sheets won't be as great, but you can get clean sheets with the likes of Laporte, Diaz, Rudiger, etc. So I think you can get a lot better value in defence for quite a bit cheaper, whereas in attack, I don't think you can get anything close to what Jota offers for his price of around 8 million. So that's just my opinion on it. I think Jota's fantastic value. I think if you're paying 7.1, that's absolutely fine. But for me, I just about prefer Jota. And therefore, I think I would prefer the triple up of Salah, Jota, and Trent. Let me know down below. If you had to choose between Robertson and Jota, who are you picking? If you were to wildcard this week, who are you picking? I think I'm just about leaning towards Jota. So the next set of players we're looking at today is Aymeric Laporte versus Ruben Dias. Now, the reason for this is Manchester City have some pretty good fixtures coming up. They're obviously, as we've said, the best defence in the league by far. 0.62 expected goals conceded per 90 is by far and away the best in the league. You can guarantee there will be clean sheets coming up in the near future. And therefore, jumping on one of them and potentially taking out a Chelsea defender, because I know quite a few people have Rudiger or Alonso. They've, of course, got 2 blanks now. So switching from a Chelsea defender to a City defender makes sense. Most of us own Cancelo anyway. So I guess the remaining choice then is therefore Laporte or Dias. You could potentially go Walker, but of course, there's the threat with Zinchenko and Ake potentially playing at fullback, Cancelo switching over to the right. So I just think, considering the lack of attacking output that you get with Walker, I just think Laporte or Dias, considering they'll play just about the same amount of minutes, they've got pretty good underlying data as well. I think I would go for Laporte or Dias. Of course, Laporte has been scoring quite a few goals recently. He's definitely been the more popular pick in the FPL community as well. But across the season, and going by general ownership, Dias is definitely the more popular pick. So I guess I just wanted to take a look at the two. Who should you be picking if you're picking one? Just starting with respect to the fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. They're not terrible, but they're not fantastic. I would, however, say that the next 2 are brilliant. So Brentford at home and Norwich away. I'd be highly shocked if they weren't both clean sheets, although we did expect a clean sheet against Southampton in Game Week 23, and that they could have conceded 3 or 4 goals in that game. So I think you'll get probably at least 1 clean sheet over the next 2, probably 2, but obviously you never know what happens in FPL. Tottenham is a difficult game. Tottenham are definitely improving. Everton, that should be a clean sheet as well. But of course, Calvert-Lewin is fantastic. Damari Gray can have those sparks of brilliance. But I would say that across the next 6, I would expect 3 or 4 clean sheets from Manchester City. The first thing to note between Laporte and Dias is that Laporte in the past has been favoured in the Champions League quite heavily. Dias has just been that sort of Iron Man that plays pretty much every fixture. That hasn't been quite the case this year, but Laporte is definitely favoured in the Champions League. And of course, they've got Stones and Ake as well, who can play at centre-back. So I would say that if Man City do make it quite a long way in the Champions League, we might see a little bit more rotation for Laporte, but that should be toward the back end of the season rather than like right this second. So it's something to monitor. It's something to think about. But I would generally say that both Laporte and Dias will play the majority of the minutes. I'd say Laporte and Dias play the most, and then you've probably got Stones coming in occasionally, maybe playing 1 in every 3. That's just my opinion on it. We'll see how it unfolds over the remainder of the season. When we take a look at the underlying stats, they've both played quite a few minutes this season. One playing 1,633 in Laporte, Dias playing 1,773. Projected points over the next 6 game weeks. Dias does just about come out on top, and that's due to expected minutes just about being higher for Dias. And I would say that that's probably the case because Dias has just had his rest. Laporte hasn't been rested in a while. So you would say that probably out of Dias and Laporte, the one to be rested next will probably be Laporte. We don't know when that'll be. It might be in 5 game weeks. It might be against Brentford. But I would say that the next one to be rotated out of the 2 is probably Laporte. Expected FPL points per 90, very, very similar, but both very good for centre-backs. We saw Robertson's was over 6 in the previous section, but for a centre-back to be close to 6 shows, number 1, decent underlying data, but number 2, how good City's defence has been. This is where I was incredibly shocked because we know how impressive Laporte has been from an attacking perspective. Dias has actually got a higher non-penalty expected goals and expected assists than Laporte. So Diaz's is 0.08 expected goals, 0.08 expected assists. So it's a 50-50 split between expected goals and expected assists. Laporte's is 0.11 expected goals, 0.03 expected assists. So the first thing to note, therefore, is Laporte's expected goals are higher, and you would prefer goals from centre-backs. But also, Diaz's underlying data is actually very good. And I've been sort of raving about how good Laporte's underlying data is. But when you look at it, Diaz's isn't bad either. What I would say is the expected assist was made up, I think, of 1 or 2 passes, which led to really high XG opportunities. And the high XG, or the 0.08 XG for Diaz, is also made up of a massive big chance. You can see that big green dot, and these are shot maps, by the way, next to Laporte and Diaz. That big green dot on Diaz's shot map is a 0.89 expected goal big chance. So Diaz had a massive chance. That was when he scored. It was 0.89 expected goals. So I would say that it is probably quite inflated, that underlying statistic, from one big chance. That doesn't mean you take that big chance out of the equation, but it is just worth bearing in mind that context, that his expected goals and expected assists are massively inflated by 1 or 2 big chances. With respect to big chances, it's 0.17 for Laporte, 0.15 for Ruben Diaz, so that's fairly similar as well. And then touches in the box, Laporte does come out on top, 1.71 for Laporte, 1.002 for Diaz. I just wanted to draw your attention to another statistic, which is absolutely brilliant. Laporte has had 24 shots in the box so far this season. That puts him top in the Premier League. He's had 26 shots in total. 24 shots in the box. He's top in the Premier League out of all defenders. So that's taken into account the likes of Cancelo, Trent, whoever it may be, Van Dijk, whichever centre-backs you can think of great in the air, me, Tarkowski. He has had the most shots in the box this season. So what I would say is Laporte is an incredible goal threat. He's definitely got a higher expected goals than Diaz, even taking into account Diaz's massive big chance of 0.89 expected goals. And you can see he gets, even if you're just looking through the eye test, he gets on the end of so many corners, crosses, free kicks, with De Bruyne delivering as well. I would be surprised if Laporte doesn't pick up another attacking return of some kind this season, whether it be an assist, a goal of some kind. His underlying data is good enough to do so. But I would say that maybe Diaz is being neglected slightly, and he could also be a fantastic pick. So I'll leave it up to you to decide. For me, I would still lean towards Laporte, considering also that he's £0.6 million cheaper. He's got the higher expected goals. I think he's just as nailed as Diaz long term, but bear in mind that Diaz has just been rested, whereas Laporte hasn't. So Laporte's probably the next one to be rested. Let me know down below. Do you prefer Laporte? Do you prefer Diaz? Are you going to be bringing either of them in, or do you prefer to go for maybe fullbacks for a little bit of a cheaper price? Speaking of fullbacks, let's move on to the next two. So the final comparison is between Matty Cash and Luca Digne. Now, we did make this comparison in the transfer targets video last week, but don't switch off because we've actually changed it up slightly this week. So if you want to see their stats over the entire season for Cash and Luca Digne, you can do so by looking at last week's video. We looked across the entire season. But what I thought would be interesting, now that we've at least had 2 games, and this is a very small sample size, is to just take an early look at which of the two look like they'll be better under Gerrard's system at Aston Villa when both are on the pitch. So, of course, both played 90 minutes in both games. They've both played 180 minutes. Like I said, 2 games is not really enough to draw meaningful conclusions, but you can definitely take an early look. You can take a look at general positioning, and you can start to see some trends, and then we'll assess this over the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks. The reason I do want to look now, though, is that their best fixtures are probably over the next 3 weeks. So they've got Leeds, Newcastle, and Watford in the next 3. And realistically, those are the fixtures you want to bring them in for. After that, they've got Brighton, Southampton, West Ham, which aren't bad. And they've got Leeds and Burnley to be rearranged at some point. But there is potential for double game weeks in 25 and 26 for Villa potentially. So they could have those Leeds and Burnley games rearranged in there. So I would say that now is the time to be jumping on Villa. Of course, Luca Digne did pick up a 12-pointer last week. We recommended him last week anyway, so I'm not just responding to points scored, but that will definitely make his ownership shoot up. You can see already 46,000 transfers in. He is the most transferred in defender so far this week, and that will continue to shoot up. Of course, there are over 2 weeks until game week 24, so by game week 24 swings around, that's going to be sort of 300, maybe 400,000 transfers in, you would expect. But is Luca Digne the one to go for? So again, if you want to look at stats across the entire season, look at last week's video. This week is just over the last 180 minutes. Projected points, I should say, to start over the next 6 weeks. The Fantasy Football Fix algorithm isn't quite confident enough yet to suggest that Luca Digne will be starting ahead of Target every game. I do think that he is definitely first choice ahead of Target, and I would be shocked if Target comes in for him, considering he's played quite well in those first 2 games. But taking that into account, Matty Cash is projected to get the most points over the next 6 fixtures because Luca Digne isn't 100% confirmed as being nailed. Expected FPL points per 90 over the last 2 weeks, over the last 180 minutes. Luca Digne comes out on top at 5.01, which is very, very good. Matty Cash is at 3.06, and that's almost exactly the same as what he's been across the entire season. So what this does mean is that it doesn't look like Cash's output is going to massively suffer because Luca Digne has come into the team. What it does mean, however, or what you can see from at least the last 2 fixtures, is that Luca Digne does look like he's going to outscore Matt Cash, at least from an attacking perspective. 3.06 for Cash, 5.01 for Digne. Non-penalty expected goals and expected assists per 90. So this is expected goal involvement. 0.05 for Matty Cash. That is a little bit lower than we've seen so far this season. 0.16 for Luca Digne. That's very, very good. That's approaching what you would expect from sort of a £5 million attacking fullback. Again, Cash has been significantly better than this across the season. Maybe then this would suggest that Luca Digne's going to take some of the attacking output away from Cash. Potentially, Cash will be asked to sit slightly deeper so that Luca Digne can attack. We don't know these things. There's a lot of hypothesizing, but you would definitely say that Cash's output has dropped slightly there. Neither of them have had any big chances over the last 2 fixtures, and touches in the box-wise, Matty Cash has had 2 or 1 per 90, and Luca Digne has had 4 or 2 per 90. So again, you can't draw too many meaningful conclusions, but it does look like the one to own at the moment, especially considering the fact he also took a few corners. That was where he got his assist from, would maybe be Luca Digne. If we take a look at the touch maps just over the last 2 fixtures, you can see that Luca Digne is getting forward significantly more as well. So they've both got quite a few touches in the centre of the pitch, around that sort of halfway line. But Matty Cash is stopped just short of the box, whereas Luca Digne continues a little bit further, and there are a few more touches in the box as well. So again, I'm not going to draw too many conclusions, but I would say that this does lean towards Luca Digne. And I said in the previous video, if you think that he's going to start above target in almost every game in the remainder of the season, I definitely think he outscores Matty Cash. So let me know which team you're in. Cash, Luca Digne. Very, very interested to hear your thoughts. I think due to his 12-pointer, that's going to sit in our recent memory, and that'll probably lead most of us to buying him. But the underlying statistics also look excellent as well. So guys, there you have it. That is part 1 of my top transfer targets ahead of Game Week 24. In other words, if you are going to bring a defender this week, I think you should probably look at Laporte just ahead of Diaz, and then Luca Digne just ahead of Cash. Of course, Laporte and Digne did score in Game Week 23. That's not the only reason, though. Their underlying data does support the fact that they're probably the 2 best to bring in. And if you do want to spend a little bit more money and you think you will provide better value than Jota, I do really like Robertson as well. Just make sure that you don't fill up that 3rd spot before you get Salah back, because I guarantee you're going to want him over the next few game weeks. If you're enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, if you want to use any of the features we've used today, whether that be the stats sandbox, whether those be the player touch maps and shot maps, or potentially the fixture analyzer, projected points, there are so many features. You can do all of that by heading to fantasyfootballfix.com. So anything we've used today, if you think any of it looks cool, do go check that out at fantasyfootballfix.com. And of course, let us know what you think if you do. Remember, part 2 will be next week. That'll be on midfielders and attackers. So do keep your eye out for that next week. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.